It's so good.
Do you like the ending part? Do you like the ending part?
Every time.
Hey, we're live. That was super sneaky. I'm trying to watch the end of the lost ending of It's a Wonderful Life, and you hit the button. I think intentionally.
Why don't you? I did. Why don't you introduce that? Like, why don't we begin with the end in mind? Tell everybody what you're watching.
So, okay, so back in 1986, William Shatner hosting Saturday Night Live. So I have a feeling that it was around the time of the release of a Star Trek movie, is my guess. I have a feeling it was the one where they go to San Francisco to get the whale. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Anybody?
Is William Shatner still alive?
The clear aluminum.
Yes. Yeah. Clear aluminum.
Yeah, well, Scotty gives the formula for aluminum that's perfectly clear.
Oh, clear, and they need the whale to.
Very nerdy.
They need the whale.
They need to make a tank.
This is
large
Scotty.
enough.
It has something to do with
well, and there's no material that exists in our time to be able to do that.
We got sidetracked as an SPSM community on the Star Trek film, but we're going to get back into it because Saturday Night Live did a skit that was a lost ending of It's a Wonderful Life. And in that episode, they discover that Mr. Potter stole the money. They had found the money that George's uncle lost, and the town gets quite outraged, and they tear Mr. Potter apart and kill him. And I have to say, I really enjoy it. It's the kind of Christmas movie I can get behind, which gets me to another point. Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And if you don't acknowledge Die Hard's Christmas element, we will have words.
Well, it's totally there's a teddy bear. There's all sorts of stuff.
There's a teddy bear.
You've seen the now infamous Die Hard ornament, right?
There are germs.
The one where he's where he's climbing through the. It's just a little box, but it's an ornament, and it looks like he's climbing through the air vent.
Oh, I have to get one of those.
I know what we're getting, Bart, for Christmas. Hey, it's a minute past the hour. You've stumbled in, full of holiday cheer, ready to talk about suicide prevention, or It's a Wonderful Life, or how to make thumbnails for your YouTube videos. You're not sure. You don't know if you're going to stay or not. I'm at Doc Foreman. This is hashtag SPSM chat. And we've just tweeted out some links, including a link to the lost ending of It's a Wonderful Life as per late 80s Saturday Night Live, which was the best Saturday Night Live, if the truth be told, right? Am I right?
Eddie Murphy years were pretty. Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Marshall, you might have to tell Marshall who Eddie Murphy is.
Oh, just go ahead and Google it. It's fine.
It's fine. It won't.
What
bother
happened
you at
to Eddie
all.
Murphy? What happened to Eddie Murphy?
He made a lot of money on those Dr. Dolittle movies.
He did, but then what happened to him? I mean, I thought Badfinger was a great movie. That's the last thing I can really
Yeah, it really popped for me too.
Was that a holiday movie? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I think it was.
Technically,
I think it was a young.
I think technically it falls into.
We're here to do an annual tradition. This is our 5th year. We started doing this our very first year. We were talking about sort of hashtags that were a little catchy, and we were talking about hashtag Project Clarence, which was a tradition that we just sort of did on a whim year one, and we're now doing this the 5th year in a row. And I don't know, we put in the blog, because, no new material. No, actually, this is cool. We're going to be talking about attaching thumbnails to your videos. It's 2 years past, well, it's for sure a year past when we should have done this. But we're going to be talking a little bit
is it parade that. Cool, or like
I like going to the Christmas parade. I have to tell you, it's we were social mediating about the Baton Rouge Christmas parade. There were only 56 floats. It was fantastic. That's what we do down here in Louisiana. We stand in the streets every chance we get. But more importantly, then in between that and some power outages, and we got like several inches of snow. Dude, it snowed all day and iced over, and it was amazing. I learned how to do video thumbnails because I am not a very accomplished photo editor, unlike Chris Maxwell and Bart Andrews. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But the way that Project Clarence started was we talked about how can we use imagery and sort of our cultural shorthand to help people understand about holiday suicide myths more effectively, and also to talk about some of the basic principles of suicide prevention while we're all learning kind of a new fun holiday skill. And we've done a lot of things. So our very, very first Project Clarence was talking about doing memes. And Bart, I did Project Clarence like about 9 months before I met you, the very, very first one, where I was like, hey kids, I'm gonna learn how to do memes, even though this photo editing thing is hard. And I introduced you to memes, Bart, very dank memes.
Well, they weren't dank, but I can freely disclose that prior to December 2014, Bart Andrews, had no idea what a meme actually was. But a lot of people might not know that I really wasn't even on social media, period, prior to 2014. I had a Facebook account, was work-based, that just got up and sat there and didn't do anything. And so I didn't really even start doing social media till that fall. So I had no idea what memes were. And so you guys introduced me to memes. God, was that 3 years ago? Has it been 3 years?
Four-ish, I don't know. I will say, like, in the meeting that we did, we started encouraging people to develop some skills, and that's what we do here at SPSM. There's no one right way to prevent suicide that we know of yet. Maybe we'll find one.
You sure about that? Because I talked to some people in the expert community that seem like they've got it all figured out. Are you sure about that, Dr. Foreman?
I've certainly met many people. That's true. Also, we have made many memes since that time. So when we first started, it was very, very basic, like conversations of, is it okay to talk about suicide using memes, right? And, bad advice duck. We were talking about the good dog, the doggo, the doge sort of memes and things like that. And we were talking about how can we use visual language and shorthand to talk about suicide prevention, and how can we discuss memes as a very, very quick way to disseminate, past the part of people's brains that has, stop and evaluate, just get right to the part of brain that says, oh, that's it. I know it's like that indirect channel, right, that they talk about in social psych. How can we use this visual language and communicate stuff very, very quickly? And we're going to talk about doing that to get people to watch a video that you might produce or other expert content. We're going to be talking about thumbnails today, which is very, very similar to memes. We talked about merchandising, which, we made Project Clarence Christmas ornaments, and I still have mine and love it. We have SPSM socks and other things like that we've made. We've done all sorts of Project Clarence themed gifts. Have we done gifts yet? Have we done Project Clarence gifts?
Gifts?
Dude, why have we done gifts? We don't do gifts. We use gifts. We don't ever make them. Kids, we'll fix that.
I don't know how to make a GIF. I can customize a GIF, but I've never made my own GIF. Chris, have you ever made your own GIF?
No, it uses Adobe tools that I don't know how to do.
Not since the dial-up days have I made a GIF.
We might need to work with those things, right? So we've talked about.
Telegraph.
So that's how we've been using Project Clarence. And this year I decided, actually probably last spring, that we were going to do thumbnails, because we've not been putting thumbnails on our SPSM videos, and YouTube sort of selects the frame, through some sort of computer magic that is going to accompany our videos. And it's often me doing this with like one eye open. It's really bad. We put an example in the blog. It's true.
That is true.
Right? And so that's not good. And that's not good for several reasons. So when you are using a platform to communicate about ideas, like if you were to turn in a research proposal, or you were to turn in a write-up to a journal, you would do an abstract, and you do an abstract that really communicates things, and there are a whole bunch of things you keep in mind, right? So when I was learning how to do like abstracts back in the days of graduate school, you needed to keep it to a certain number of words, you needed to follow the rules, you needed to pick the data that was going to be really, really compelling to people, because abstracts what people looked at to decide whether or not they were going to consume your content or not. And people do all sorts of things to write, like little reviews, little summaries, little abstracts. We live in a world where there's so much information. People have to make very quick judgments about which of your content to consume. One of the big sort of, and I don't want to say errors, it wasn't like we're doing it wrong, we just weren't, omissions is probably better, is that we weren't really, as a channel, representing with our thumbnails. If people were to go look at all the videos, we weren't representing what the content was in a way that people could quickly understand what it was that they were about to view. So it just looks like we're looking at somebody who has an eye problem. And that was it. That would have been a great gift. Please make a gift out of that, Chris.
Chris just told you he doesn't know how to do that yet.
No, but we'll learn, absolutely. So today we're going to talk a little bit about It's a Wonderful Life. We're going to do a little bit of a Steven Stack-esque review. We're going to talk about some of the facts about suicide that this movie gets right, some that it gets wrong, what with some things that we found that were really, really interesting. And we're going to, talk about the really, really big myth. Fundamentally, take-home message. If you can make a thumbnail or a meme or a GIF or a piece of merchandise, holidays are traditionally, in most places, where we have the lowest suicide rates of the year. Not the highest, the lowest. Remarkably, this is probably the first year that I have not been asked to do a media interview talking about why everybody.
You're supposed to say yes, Tony.
Yes,
the
Tony.
Lowest. We'll do it. We'll do take two. Okay, you say the lowest.
The lowest.
What?
Yes, Tony. The lowest.
You guys, can we just do that every time we have one of those? It just makes the sizzle reel easier to create.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, we'll just.
Do we ever fix anything in post?
No.
What?
We've never fixed anything in post.
No.
One time.
No.
One time Foreman did some magic with the post. One time that I know of.
Maybe once.
Maybe. No, I think there was a thing involving
me saying something that I shouldn't have said. Yes.
I don't think so. No, I don't remember that.
Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, the thing about It's a Wonderful Life is that this is this quintessential holiday movie. And I never do this in public, but I'm gonna reference 2 Paul Simon songs because if one of those things, if you're my good friend, you might find out about me sadly. And this is why I often don't play my music in public, is I'm a die-hard Paul Simon fan. And one of the songs that he sings about Christmas is playing "It's a Wonderful Life." That this couple, Darling Lorraine, this guy and his wife, it talks about the course of their relationship. On Christmas Day, make pancakes, and all day they watch "It's a Wonderful Life." It's one of those movies that streams. This is embedded into our narrative about Christmas, and it's funny enough, it is embedded into our narratives about suicide, and that's why we talk about. Probably It's a Wonderful Life has, and I don't know if single-handedly may be the wrong way to put this, but in a lot of ways has caused more reporters to reach out to me to do an article, a Christmas article about mental health. Like, it's Christmas, what do we talk about? Don't kill yourself. As opposed to talking about it in like March. Bart, what does the research say? Why would we want to talk about suicide in like March or May and not December? Don't look up Bart.
Bart.
Bart. Suicide in March and May, not December.
Yeah, why we wouldn't want to talk about it in March?
I'm working on a meme here.
I know you'll get there. You'll get there. I believe in you.
Chris.
Why wouldn't we want to talk about suicide prevention in March, Bart?
Well, I think we would, because that's when the suicide rate starts going up.
What? Then you said, that's right, Tony. Okay, then you said, Bart, then you said, that's right, Tony. Okay, we'll try it again, one more time.
That's right, Tony. Okay, let's do it again.
No,
we would talk about it in March because that's when the suicide rate goes up.
What?
Yeah, Tony. A lot of people don't realize this, but the suicide rates actually are at their nadir.
Nadir?
Is the nadir? Is that the bottom or the top? I always forget the top and the bottom.
Nadir is the top.
I think nadir's at the top.
Venus is at the top.
Boy, that didn't go well.
This is a real, and Bart's like laying down the knowledge. It's going to be me like trying not to laugh very hard during a very serious factoid. That's no bueno. So
this feels like my personal meter.
Yeah, there's no control left anymore. This is
why were people more likely to kill themselves when the weather gets warmer and there's more light? They're not feeling depressed and sad because they're alone on Christmas.
Are you asking? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. We've talked about this before in terms of antidepressants too. But Bart shot me down the last time I tried to.
Why did I shoot you down?
Because right, because it's darker. You have less time, so you're sleepy. You get worse sleep in the winter, and so you don't have as much energy to really do anything, and that includes actually attempting your suicide. So you have a lot of time to sit and think about it, and just get more and more depressed and just feel terrible. But you just generally don't have enough energy. And then when it starts getting lighter, the days start getting longer. Your energy picks up, and then that's when and that's why it's so interesting for a lot of people who are like, and heartbreaking for people who are like, well, it seemed like that they were coming out of it. It seemed like their mood was improving. It seemed like their energy levels were going up. Their sleep was improving. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they attempted or why they ended up dying. And that's at least what I understand.
So the big thing, and I think that people have been really working on this for a while, is that historically December is one of the lower months. What we really have to do is be paying attention to spring as people's energy level changes, as there's more light, as they start to think about their life in a different way. Additionally, in December, we have some other things that are going on. People are reaching out more. So there may be a home that, where a family member may take you in for a holiday celebration. There may be, like, people may recognize that you're going through economically a hard time, and there might be some gifts or some support. For example, my neighborhood social media right now, my Nextdoor. Do you guys have the Nextdoor? Do you guys have Nextdoor? We have Nextdoor, right? And it's like Facebook, but for the neighborhood. And so right now, everybody is like, oh, someone in our neighborhood has just taken in some foster kids who don't have much. And everyone's like, let me know what size clothing they need. Let me know what Christmas gifts they have. And the neighborhood is like spontaneously rallying and taking in donations. And one person, said, if you remember, I mentioned a couple months ago, well, Christmas is coming up, and the response is amplified because people are in this sort of very communal social mood about Christmas. So they are taking care of each other, or are meeting needs, or helping sometimes with some of those social determinants of health, right? And some of that connectedness is really socially facilitated in a way that it might not be also in March or May, or, for me, it's like as the months get hotter, that's when prices go up.
I think a lot of people like vacation time at the end of the year to do various holiday activities. I think that probably contributes to just regular self-care.
Yeah, a little bit of time off, and it may not even vacation. There just may be like a day off, an extra day to sleep.
Yeah, a PTO is what I meant by vacation. Just something where you're not working.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the things that I want you all to be thinking about when we talk about sort of myths is that it's really good to start talking to other people about that. But It's a Wonderful Life, we're going to do Stephen Stackhouse. We're going to talk about a lot of sort of facts versus sort of social narratives about suicide. Before we do that, I'm going to switch it back to thumbnails, and I'm going to get Chris to talk about Canva and PicMonkey. So here's my big take-home advice about thumbnails. This is from a person who's not nearly as good as Chris and not as good as Bart. And and Tony, by the way, I did this without calling and crying to you. At a house full of people, because there was like a blackout. There was a blackout, and so I was with a room full of people, so I had to like emotionally contain myself and learn how to do this. It was a long evening, I'm just going to tell you. But you're going to use some very easy to use photo editors, and you have to remember a numeric ratio, right? Chris, what did you learn? What did you learn from my little, it looks like it's as easy as this. Chris, talk about Canva and PicMonkey and what the secret is.
Yeah, so the biggest the biggest piece of this is to remember that the size ratio for the image and the graphic that you're creating, it's 1920 by 1080 pixels. So that's what you're looking at. It's a funny little rectangle. It's not a size that is used in a lot of other things, but that's the number you need. And so I don't use PicMonkey. I did watch the tutorial that you had sent us. I don't know if we tweeted that out. And it is a really, really good tutorial. If I were to use PicMonkey, I feel very confident that I would be able to do that. But what she does is, and I guess how PicMonkey works is, and I think Megan actually uses PicMonkey too. And maybe, and I know Suzanne Ibarra uses it as well. So I probably messed up her last name, but
I tried it and I didn't have any success with PicMonkey, so I went straight to Canva, which is what I liked about it, because if you learn the 1920 1080, it does not matter what you use. Keep going.
So yeah, you have to create the canvas, right? Like, so you have to create the image size, and then you can just start plopping stuff onto the image. So I love Canva because, and we talk about it all the time, but it's just super easy to use. You are presented with very few options, but they're all super intuitive. Things with it, you can create logos, and if you wanted to create a transparent image using a PNG file, you can do that as well. So there's a lot of different options now. and they do have, Canva has a whole catalog of free pictures that you can use. So they're all, what is it, common, I want to say Common Core, but it's not Common Core. It's Creative Commons license.
Yeah.
So they're all free. You don't have to pay for them. They do have paid and premium pictures as well. But yeah, so you create that background, that image, and then you just drag and drop some text. You can mess with the text. You make it look nice. It took me, the one that I created and Bart tweeted out a couple days ago, it took me maybe 15 minutes. So once you kind of get the hang of how these things work, you can just pop them out really fast. Singer mentioned Unsplash too, and that's a great place to find free image.
Yeah, I like them for images.
Selections.
And one of the things, like if we're doing a YouTuber, we're going to talk about things that you might want to put in a thumbnail. Like what I liked about Canva was Canva had a template for YouTube thumbnails that was already the right size, and you could double check it. And then I could sort of flip an image or mess with an image to fit it into the template without manually sort of creating a template, which you could also do. And then YouTube offered several different graphic templates, and so I played with it. And I did a couple until I felt good enough, and then I did one that I thought was fun for Project Clarence, which we tweeted out today. But so, I mean, YouTube will change. The 1980 or the 1920 1080 ratio, like that might be different someday. But what you're basically looking for is, if you don't know how to do it, the mega skill is go to YouTube or go wherever the social media is, find, someone, if other people are doing it, someone's going to say, here's how you do your own. Try it out, invest an hour. I got to where I could do it in, 10 minutes or less very quickly and not feel stressed after I did 2 or 3. And this is like everything with social media. You have to just kind of sit down and mess with it for a little while. Chris, I would say I don't do good ones. Like, so if you had some advice about how to do one that was like, didn't suck as bad.
I liked yours, actually. I really liked yours. So I wouldn't say that they're bad at all. But yeah, find okay, the most important thing, and we'll probably talk about this at some point too, is that whatever you end up creating, make sure that you're creating a brand so that you have consistency from video to video, that your thumbnails look similar enough that when people just see a list of your videos, they know that this is something from your content. This is your content from your channel. They can see what that is. I've noticed a lot of really, really bright colors in some of the more popular thumbnails and some of the more popular channels. So lots of like cartoon or artsy kind of explosion looking graphics that people put on the backs. And usually they have, they do screenshots of their videos to do the thumbnails, but then they add like little text and But they just make it look visually appealing so that when you see it out of your peripheral vision, it looks like something you want to click on. Those are probably the most important things. Everything else is just content.
Unless you're into some weird shit, this isn't what you want to click on. You want to click on something that really, like, what I also liked about, doing the thumbnail was I could put, the hashtags and things on there, which YouTube won't let you put in the title anymore. I could put the SPSM logo in there, so you could put your logo in every, which I think we're going to do, is to drop a little tiny SPSM chat icon into our chat ones, and maybe do a slightly different one, have a slightly different format for the sizzles so people can tell the sizzles, apart from the chat. The people that I saw, they said, I do all of mine this way. I put a couple of keywords. Sometimes it's a bit of a teaser. If you're doing more professional content, you might not want it to be, cartoons, but I consume more YouTube than I do regular television. I watch YouTube every day while I'm working or doing whatever. And I look at these all the time. It's not like I don't know what it looks like. We just haven't been doing them, which is, shame on us, right? Very easy to do. I recommend doing it just like you put a title page on things, just like you put an abstract. Give people a couple of things so that they know what to expect when they click on the video, because you don't want to surprise people in a bad way. Chris is just like, we're going to learn how to make GIFs. Foreman's given us enough GIF material for the rest of the year.
I have to, that's my new goal. That's going to be my project, Clarence, I have a feeling.
And our big challenge to y'all is do a little thing on myths about suicide or facts about suicide, or if this is a stressful holiday for you, what can you do about holiday stress to manage suicidality? Because some people may be managing chronic suicidality in the middle of having a wonderful Christmas. Like the two aren't necessarily exclusive in any way, mutually exclusive. And so you might, for example, say, I'm a person with lived experience and here's how I manage the holidays, and do a neat little thumbnail, do 2 or 3. That would be a cool way. Tag SPSM so we can see and we can share with the hiatus. But just get, I think we can clap them up just a little bit, I think, in our field. And that is the little spiel about thumbnails. That is all I have to say, which is Google a tutorial, screw around with Canvas or one of the templates, PicMonkey. And then if you go to YouTube, YouTube's recently changed things. You go to the Creator Studio menu, and then you're going to go look at your videos, and you'll just hit the edit button, and it'll show thumbnails, and then it says you can upload a custom thumbnail. And I just upload whatever image I downloaded from my photo editor. I download the image from my photo editor. I upload it into my YouTube account. It's really not more complicated than that. And if I can learn it in an hour, Tony, if Dr. Foreman can learn it, what's the bottom line?
Everybody can learn it.
Because I am really the most emotionally dysregulated by learning these things of pretty much anyone Tony ever works with.
So I'm going to jump in though, because Chris and Jonathan are really good with Canva. They're gifted with Canva. You did an excellent job with Canva. Canva overwhelms me a little bit. I get lost in some of the clicks. I can't get back to where I'm at. I've added too many text fields or too many shapes. I'm a big fan of Word Swag. I just sent out a couple of examples of what you can do with Word Swag very quickly. The meme that I just put out with Paul Ryan was made with Word Swag. The Christmas meme, really basic, not nearly as sophisticated or slick as polished as what Chris and Dr. Singer do. But Word Swag, for those of you who don't want to jack around and have to learn a ton of stuff, Word Swag is pretty easy to pick up, and it's got what is that? Pixabay. It's got Pixabay, which is Creative Commons pictures. It's Pixabay's built in. It's all free. I did think, Chris, did you pay for extra features on Word Swag? I think I did. Is there an upgrade on Word Swag? I think there is.
I think it actually costs maybe a $1 or $2 when you first buy it.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
But yeah. if you want to play around, and for some folks, I think Canva's just, I don't have time to mess around with Canva. WordSwag is a great alternative. It's easier to use, and for most things it works pretty well, and it doesn't take as long. So I think that you can do good stuff with it. But Canva is so much more powerful than WordSwag. You can do so much more with it. But down and dirty, go WordSwag.
Down and dirty WordSwag.
Down and dirty WordSwag.
But the rule of thumb that I use is that if I have 10 or 15 minutes to sit down at my computer and create a graphic and pop something out, and I have an image of what I want it to look like, Canva, and that's what I roll with. But if I need to pop out an image really super quickly, and I don't have a lot of time, or I don't know exactly what I want it to look like, then I go to WordSwag because it does so much of the hard work for you. So, and both of them, I just tweeted this out too, but Canva constantly enhances their services. They're always adding new stuff. They're always fixing stuff. WordSwag just added a whole bunch of really, really cool things that make it just 10 times easier. So whatever you like, whatever you prefer, just keep using it and go with it. Just keep making stuff.
Everybody, SPSM, keep making stuff, which is true. Absolutely true. As we are moving into, 2016 was the year of the live stream. 2017, we're doing it even more. We're definitely moving more into videos, learning how to have a graphic image that makes people want to click on and watch your videos. I think the tutorial that we were watching, they said that having better thumbnails, engaging thumbnails that sort of fit the communication needs of your audience was increasing views. And so we're going to see if that works with SPSM. I know that as we've added more things, we've gotten more views, we get more shares, people are more engaged with what we do. And they just are. So we're going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that at the end of every night. Plus, I think it'll be fun, right? Sometimes it is more fun than writing the 200-word abstract, which is not easy to do. Bart? You had a Bart.
Well, I think that I love reading abstracts, and I don't want to diminish the art and the finesse and just the overall creativity that goes into abstract writing, because I think down the road people will look back on this time and they'll go to our abstracts and say, Jesus, these are some creative mofos, right? But if you're not ready for abstract writing, which really is the kind of the pinnacle, it's like the Leonardo da Vinci level of creativity, then try out Canva, WordSwag. Those are fun things to do. Or if you're old school, MS Paint, which people apparently is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and can be kind of fun. So if you're an MS painter, I say go forth and MS Paint away. Was that too much? Was that too much?
I learned MS Paint when I was in 6th grade, and I think, or was that mouse? I learned it in Paint in 6th grade with the mouse. That was one of the first things I did a mouse activity with. Tony's telling me I'm having some feedback, so I'm going to switch out my mic situation. While I'm doing that, I would like for you guys to go ahead. Bart, can you lead the discussion on It's a Wonderful Life and the Steven Stack review?
Sure, I'm going to do that. But first, I want to. Katie Gordon made a great comment. We've been talking about holidays and the suicide rate, and so there's this myth, and it's true that it's a myth that the suicide rate is higher over the holidays. It's not. But I think one of the things, and Katie's really good about pointing this out, and Marshall also commented on this, that doesn't mean that the holidays can't be one. It doesn't mean that people don't kill themselves over the holiday. They certainly do. So it's not like the suicide rate drops to 0. It's just lower, so people are less likely to kill themselves over the holidays. But people can experience a tremendous amount of pain and isolation over the holidays. For many folks, and I'm not a good holiday person. I'm going to be really clear about that. I have some issues.
You don't like you don't like all of my Marco Polos of family fun.
I'm not a big Christmas person, and people who really like Christmas, it takes a lot of energy from me over this period of time not to
murder me.
I work hard. I think I did good during the parade, April. Don't you think that I was fairly
I think you were discussing World War with Denmark.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so it did devolve into Denmark slaughtering people in the streets with Danishes. But I think on a side note, the holidays are really rough. In fact, my uncle, the last time I saw my uncle alive, for the folks who don't know, my uncle Mike died of suicide when I was 19 years old. The last time I saw my uncle Mike alive was at Christmas. Now, he didn't kill himself until March, right? But we had a huge fight at Christmas, and he stormed out of the house. It was a mess. People were distraught. And we didn't. And I think that one of the things about Christmas is that we really should be looking out for people, because just because people aren't killing themselves as often as Christmas, if people are having a hard time at Christmas, I have a pretty sneaky suspicion that's predictive of them being in worse shape in the spring. So I think a lot of people think that people get better as the weather and the light improves. And what we're learning is that, in fact, their risk increases as light increases and as energy levels increase. So I don't want to minimize that the holidays can be really hard on folks. And I think that It's a Wonderful Life does a really good job of kind of describing in a beautiful way about how it can be really hard for people around Christmas.
Great segue. So, and everyone can hear me. So is the sound better, Tony? Have we fixed the sound problem?
So much better. So much better.
Fantastic. Sometimes the wireless buds work. Sometimes they don't. I haven't figured it all out. So here's the deal. I went through and rewatched It's a Wonderful Life. It's a movie that I've seen many, many times. Chris watched it for the first time. Sometimes when you watch a movie, like when you know you're going to talk about it, you watch it with new eyes. The racism, the sexism, the weird social acceptance of alcohol use disorders and child abuse were sort of stunning to me. I'm just going to put that on the table right there. Things that you would never see in a Disney movie and a beloved TV special today. But the story really starts with these little twinkling stars that are discussing George Bailey. And George Bailey is going to consider attempting suicide, and he is going to be interrupted by Clarence the angel in a suicide attempt, who is going to show him what the world would be like, would have been like if he had never been born, because that's one of the things talks about, like, everyone would have been better off without me. And so It's a Wonderful Life seeks to answer that question. But first they start with, a review of George Bailey's life. Very early in life, George Bailey dives into the water to save his younger brother from drowning in the winter, right? And George Bailey becomes very, very ill, loses the hearing in one of his ears. And when we talk about childhood, like physical trauma, head trauma, accidents, so there'll be more trauma to his ear, and, some whacking of his head. We know that things like illnesses, physical trauma to your head, stuff like that, we know that can increase your risk for mental health challenges and for suicide later in life. And we don't understand why. And we know that boys are more at risk because of this, because they're more likely to have experienced some of those things. Tony, I was wondering if you could tell the plot with Mr. McGower, the pharmacist.
It's Mr. Gower, I think.
Is it Mr. Gower, not McGower?
It's Mr. Gower. There's no Mick in it.
Dang it.
Serving the Irish, your standard
Irish. Standard messing up people's names. So Mr. Gower is the pharmacist, and
Mr. Gower's the pharmacist, and George Bailey catches Mr. Gower because Mr. Gower also happens to be an alcoholic pharmacist. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film. This is not, when you make a list of stuff in this movie, it is not like, oh, it's your holiday feel-good film. Oh, okay.
Really not.
Not exactly, no. But yeah, so Mr. Gower happens to be an alcoholic, I believe, because his son has died in the war.
He gets a telegram.
He gets a telegram that son's died in the war. This, of course, exacerbates his already present alcoholism. And he apparently fills a prescription with poison rather than with the proper pharmaceuticals. And George Bailey, is the delivery boy for Mr. Gower's pharmacy, at probably 3 cents a week or something. And he goes to Mr. Gower, and he tells them there's something wrong with the pills, and Mr. Gower whacks him upside the head about as hard as he can.
On the open-handed.
that he's already injured on. And of course, George is in tears.
Blood is spurting out of the ear. Blood is spurting out of the ear on the movie. So we have the drunk adult
font
hitting the kid.
Font of blood and gore seeping from the head and cranium of. This isn't in the movie. That's not true. It's not.
I know it is. They have
there's a little bit of blood. It's not really a spurt, though. It's not.
Dude,
like
if that was your kid and there was
spurt.
blood coming out of their ear like that, you'd be driving to the emergency room.
Right. Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. But, then again, of course, Mr. Gower's the only pharmacist in town, so you're kind of complicating things there, right? But the back to Mr. Gower. So George informs Mr. Gower that he's put poison in the pills, and Mr. Gower, in his sort of drunken stupor, is sort of contrite about the fact that he has done this, but only barely so. And then we cut to another scene.
And as a matter of fact, George Bailey even goes to ask his father what to do because Gower has hit him and ordered him to deliver the poison pills. George Bailey goes to ask his father. So he's bleeding ear. He's got and the father's like, "I'm busy, son. We'll talk tonight at dinner." So also not very communicative about the feelings, not sure what's going on.
That's
George
true.
Bailey comes back and tearfully, and just yells at Gower to, explain this is poison. We can't deliver it. And then, of course, when Clarence the Angel shows what his life would have been like, Gower goes to prison for manslaughter. But in this particular instance, what we see is we cut to George Bailey all grown up. Mr. Gower buys George Bailey a suitcase because George Bailey is off to see the world, and Mr. Gower is in recovery and appears to be sober and well. And that was another sort of theme of this movie, which was that mental illness is caused by stress, which I think is interesting. I think Bart would agree with that there's a piece of it where they really are talking about what has happened that has caused these ill behaviors. And they really are trying to explain a bit sort of the trauma, what has happened to you. And so we see that Mr. Gower's traumatized. Bailey get a bunch of TBI, right? He's off to see the world. And everything's going to be fine. He's finally going to leave this small little town. Except what happens? You guys remember, Chris? What happens? You were still pretty with it at this point when you were watching the movie.
What are you asking? I was responding to a tweet.
What happens as George Bailey's supposed to take his suitcase from Mr. Gower and go see the world? Like he's heading out of town.
Oh God, I don't remember. That was way too early in the movie.
He's got a suitcase. He's fixing to go see the world, and his mom and his dad have told him, but before he goes, he needs to go to his brother's high school graduation, and there's this girl named Mary he should dance with, right? So on what Stephen Stack tells us is in a lot of movies, the antidote, the thing that makes people less suicidal is finding love. But in fact, finding love for George Bailey does not. It causes him some complications. So he falls in love with Mary at this dance, and there's a whole scene with her. They're walking home naked because they've fallen into a swimming pool. Well, they're not. Well, she ends up naked. She ends up naked in a bush. I know this is very, very racy for black and white Jimmy Stewart. She's naked in a bush, and George Bailey is sort of thinking about whether or not to give her robe back, and they're flirting and falling in love. When what happens? Why doesn't he sort of seal the deal with Mary?
Because he's intoxicated.
No.
No?
I feel like I'm the only one who watched this movie.
No, I'm sorry.
What happens is that a car drives up with two guys in it. What are the two guys' names, Bart?
Bert and Ernie.
Bert and Ernie.
And they tell him.
Wait a minute. We need to stop for a second. Did everybody else in the world already know that the characters Bert and Ernie came from It's a Wonderful Life?
They didn't really, but that's what people say.
They did. No, Tony. No, they did. It's not just coincidence that there's a Bert and Ernie on Sesame Street and there's a Bert and Ernie in It's a Wonderful Life.
30 years later.
Connect the dots.
That looks filthy, Bart.
Sure. You know the Batusi?
Well, first of all, let's point out a couple. We're going to take a sidestep because, first of all, Foreman's most focused on It's a Wonderful Life on two things: the blood spurting out of the ear and a naked woman. Those are the two highlights so far that you've been very focused on.
Harassing her. He needs to give her the robe.
Well, and George Bailey also vandalizes a house, as I recall, in the process
well,
as well. He
while
just
they're flirting.
openly vandalizes a house, just throws a rock through a family home's window.
Well, it's abandoned.
We don't know that.
It becomes his home. What happens to George Bailey, though, is he's found love and he's flirting, and a car drives up, and it's Bert and Ernie, and they say that his father has had a stroke, and his father runs the savings and loan. And for this particular time in history, the savings and loan enable sort of everyday people to use their money to help sort of sponsor their neighbors to get very low interest loans to get into houses. And this was a way that people moved from factory workers paying rent to most people being homeowners in this sort of period of history. And this is a really important sort of social thing that's happening that's portrayed in the movie, right? And George Bailey leaves naked Mary in the bush to go straight to his father's side. And again, Bart, this is about those aces and about these sort of traumatic events. George Bailey's about ready to leave and see the world, and but then he's called in about his father's stroke and eventual death, and then it leaves the whole issue of the savings and loan at stake. Do you remember, Chris? Bart?
Yes, yeah. There's as you go through the movie, the layers of trauma that George experiences, but it's not just the traumatic events. The traumatic events are huge, but there's also some learned helplessness, right? Mm-hmm. Not some. There's a lot of learned helplessness in George, because anytime that something really good is about to happen, right? Something always gets in the way where George does not get to fulfill a dream or an important goal, right? And that happens repeatedly all the way through. Every time that George gets really close to finally achieving something that he's really excited about, really proud of, really focused on, something bad happens. And then there's this there's this series of these disappointments until the very end when we get to the bank, and he's got the $8,000. And he lets I'm gonna give George some grief. I think letting his uncle be in charge of the $8,000, bad decision, George. I'm just gonna say that up front. I don't mean to be judgy about it. It was a bad choice, George. Bad choice. But then there it is, right? And at Christmas. So he's going to save the savings and loan. He's going to make this happen. And then one more time, it's that final time where everything has gone wrong.
He meets Mary, remember? And he's so excited. So it's a stroke has happened. And then that's the savings and loan. And Potter's going to take over the savings loan. He makes a big speech. And he sort of figures out how to bail it out. And he finally is convinced to go take Mary out, right? And falls in love, and they get married. He marries Mary. And then he takes his money that they were going to go have this extravagant honeymoon, see the world, and leave the small town when there's a run on the bank. And there's a run on the bank. So he goes and he sacrifices, and he takes their $2,000 and saves the savings alone with his money. And they stay, right? And Mary, he keeps sort of making a home with Mary. And then they have kids, which is a reason for a living, by the way. This responsibility to the town and being really important to the lives of others. We're going to talk about Joiner's theory with him just a moment, but in a lot of ways, his responsibility for others is a reason for living and a reason for tremendous self-sacrifice for George Bailey. And so, he keeps sacrificing. There's a run on the bank. He uses his honeymoon money to bail out the bank. He and his wife, do you guys remember when he sees, what's the guy's name, the hee-haw guy? Remember when he invests in plastics and becomes really rich, and George didn't invest in plastics, he saves the savings and loan and helps people, working class people, have houses?
Yes.
What is the theory about suicidality, which is about social comparison? Because he compares himself to hee-haw and his wife, who's wearing the rich fur, and they have the fancy car, right? Do you guys remember this?
Yeah,
and they were like, "Oh, George, you should have invested in plastics." And they drive off and are rich. And here's George still in. What?
They do. I mean, really, George's life is seriously painful. I mean, Frank Capra packed a lot of pain, but it was timely pain. This was 1946. The war was World War II had just ended. When this film was released, this film was being completed while the war was still going on. And he packed pretty much every trauma of the last 20 or 30 years, the previous 20 or 30 years, into this film. Almost everything bad that could happen to anybody, almost all of it intersected with George Bailey in one way or another. It's just astonishing that this is considered to be kind of a hopeful film, Chris.
Well, yeah, but it's righteous pain, right? Like, it's just ultimately self-sacrificing. Like, that type of mindset back in the 40s was so powerful for a lot of people. They didn't see that as oppressive. They saw it as empowering. They were like, oh, it's the bootstrap theory. It's all of that stuff. It's that was what made it so good. So in the movie, it's actually presented in a way that he's doing all these things selflessly and just repeatedly. It's not even seen as trauma. It's not portrayed as trauma.
No,
you have to, like,
portrayed as like social. Like, this is a person who's socially well adjusted.
Yeah, this is virtue.
Right.
This is what virtue
this is what you get. Exactly. This is virtue. This is martyrdom. This is righteousness.
Yes.
And so, due to all of those things, you have an angel come down and save you. I think that's the moral.
And the angel part of it is really the major religious theme, I think. Now I'm trying to think through it. Is there another religious theme in this film except Clarence? I don't think there's not a lot more religion in there. That's something that is interestingly absent.
There's another theme going on here that we haven't touched on, in that Clarence the angel is like the slacker, really bad angel, right? I mean, and I want to point this out.
He's got no wings.
Can we just point out that God uses like his worst angels to do suicide prevention? I mean, there's some. I don't know if anybody's commented on this before, but God's kind of like, it's just send Clarence for freaking sake. It's not a big deal. I mean, he's not sending his best and brightest down there. What's going on here? We need the best and the brightest involved in this. But maybe the other message is that even a loser angel like Clarence can save somebody's life if they care and they're properly trained.
Yeah, Clarence was pretty well trained.
He was not properly trained, I don't think. Because he ends up all wet, I think, and half nude as well. There's a lot of nudity. There's a lot of
he's an angel.
nudity. Well, because he's not too bright. Like, I mean, that's the major part of this, is that, like, it's very clear from the beginning that Clarence is kind of a doofus. I mean, he goes into the bar scene. He goes to the bar scene and he orders something from the 19th century. A rum punch. Like a goof.
A rum punch. Those are delicious.
That's right.
Those are delicious.
Well, yeah, of course they're delicious, but it wasn't that kind of bar.
When we start to get to the bridge, what's happened is that Potter, who is a mean old man, they really he's a mean old man who cares about money and doesn't care about other people, does everything he can to destroy the savings and loan, and he's figured out a way to get the shares and call a contract due. And George Bailey, they were supposed to deliver an $8,000 payment, but we've given it to Uncle Billy, who clearly has early onset dementia. And they've given it to Uncle Billy, who's lost the money. And so let's talk about the insurance, because we talk about suicidality and a life insurance policy. So George Bailey takes his life insurance policy to Mr. Potter. You guys, what happens then?
That part was the most salient for me, I think, just in that he takes it and he says, he's put up defenses the entire time against Mr. Potter, saying no, I won't be your assistant, right? I'm not going to come work for you. I'm not going to let you crush my business or my family business. But this is the time when we see him crumble in front of Mr. Potter. Yeah, and the town. And so he crumbles in front of Mr. Potter and says, this is what I have left. I can give you my life insurance policy as collateral for a loan to take care of this payment. And it's his life insurance policy. Mr. Potter says something along the lines of, you're better off. You're worth more dead than you are alive. Yeah. And so that was when he goes, I'm going to call the cops because you're not going to pay us. Yeah. It was just escalates so quickly.
So then we have an inescapable problem. We have the sense of being a burden, and the sense that if I die, everybody that might save the savings and loan, and I've sacrificed everything. Why not kill myself too? And George is going to jump. He's going to jump off the bridge, And
Yeah.
Kevin Briggs isn't there. We only have Clarence.
We got Clarence.
So what?
Who's drinking rum punches and has his track
Correct.
record so far isn't great.
No,
Have you
it's
considered
not
serving
wonderful.
rum punch to your staff, Bart?
What? My staff's phenomenal. They've got their wings already. They're experts.
We should
Oh.
give them little Clarences. Little Clarence. I should make them Clarence pins. That'd be adorable.
I wonder with the millennials I'm not sure that the millennials are even aware of It's a Wonderful Life. Am I speaking out of turn?
I don't think they
are we
are
dating
because it stopped being on television.
Should we do Will Ferrell's Elf?
Elf is a great.
Elf?
Elf's a great movie.
Or Will Ferrell. Oh, yes.
Elf's really good.
But here's a really good principle of suicide prevention that is illustrated by the movie, which is Clarence says, "I don't know if you should jump. Let's check the facts about your life." Now there are some probably there may be some intervention tactical errors that Clarence has made. Of note, one of the important ones, which is that because Clarence is right there and intervenes, George Bailey decides not to kill himself. And we know that if George Bailey's suicide attempt is interrupted, that he's unlikely to die by suicide moving forward in the future. So if there had been a bridge barrier, we wouldn't have even needed Clarence. But because we did have Clarence, George Bailey, his chances of surviving are pretty significant. What do you know about intervening with somebody who is in the middle of considering a suicide attempt, Bart? What did the movie get right? What did it get wrong?
Well, I think one of the things the movie gets right is that Clarence with George lets George retell his story, right? And gets George to kind of, so they basically retell George's story about what's led to the suicide, but also the other things, and through kind of acknowledging where George is. Yeah, you're thinking about this. Let's kind of take a look back, and I think one of the things that the movie gets really right, and I think that lots of folks have been talking about this. We don't put enough emphasis that good suicide prevention, finding meaning and purpose in their lives, and that meaning and purpose are absolutely vital, and that when people are in a suicide crisis, they've often lost that sense of meaning and purpose. And I think that one of the things Clarence does really, really well is really helps George through George's own story see the meaning and purpose in his life, right? How much value. And I think this is absolute truth. I can't watch It's a Wonderful Life without tearing up. I simply can't. I can rag on the movie, and I like to make fun of Clarence, but I'm really a softie. In that movie, when George really starts to see how much meaning and value there really is in his life, it really hits me, right, incredibly hard. And I think that's something that in many ways this film was way ahead of its time in terms of, notice at no point does the angel suggest, wow, we really need to get the police and get you involuntarily committed, George. I think that I'm pretty impressed with that.
Movie, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Clarence shows up, calls 911, and George is carted off in handcuffs, which is unfortunate.
There's no 911. He'd have to just summon the police.
Well, the police.
And then they put him in chains. Then they throw him in the drunk tank until they can haul him to the state asylum.
Yes.
That's pretty much how it should work in 1945. I mean, that's pretty much.
Is that much difference from what we do now?
We have no state asylum. We have no state system. Are you kidding?
We just have prisons.
We assembled all that.
And there is so much better than a state asylum.
Jail and prison. That's all we got. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy jail.
When Clarence allows George to sort of have a thought about what life would have been like without him, and his importance to others, and like his reasons for living and his connectedness to others, George does decide to live. And in addition, there's this moment of allowing his community to rally behind him. And so what happens at the end of the movie, you just need to watch it, is you do get choked up when everybody's like, I've got $1, I've got $2, and they figure out a way to come up with the money to keep the savings and loan open and to help and to say, like, we support you back. This is a very life-affirming moment. And of course, Clarence the Angel gets his wings, right?
Oh, isn't it sweet?
Which is so sweet.
Also, we should take a moment to examine altruism. I think this is a good time, Chris, to talk about altruism doesn't exist.
Should we? Oh, God, you've done it now.
What?
I think this is a good time to talk about the fact that those people are supporting the savings and loan because they don't want to have to lose their houses to Mr.
They're going to lose their
Potter.
homes. Exactly.
Yeah,
and they don't want to be a part of his slum.
No.
No.
And they know what's going to happen. He's going to gouge them, and they're going to have no choice. And you know, and if they don't pay, Connor will just have them arrested. So, you know, they throw in the $2 not because they think George is a great guy, but because they don't want to lose everything they have.
You think?
Maybe the most cynical take on It's a Wonderful Life that's ever occurred in the history of movie reviews of It's a Wonderful Life.
I don't think it might have been the screenwriter's purpose, but I think there's an underlying.
And I have just gone to Twitter jail, and I want to thank Tony for the many kinds of two-factor authentication that I have, so I won't be able to unlock my Twitter account for the remainder of the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 11 p.m. Eastern. Can you believe it?
But here, bottom line. You can do a brief review of It's a Wonderful Life. It's topical. You can talk about major themes and facts about suicide prevention and ways that the movie does or does not support the facts. You can talk about myths. It's topical. You can do it right now. We're going to be posting this video when we wrap it all up, and there's going to be a thumbnail. There'll be a thumbnail for all of our videos moving forward, and I'll try to do some retroactively. We've done a lot to generate content that people would want to watch. So let's use our Project Clarence skills, and it looks like Maxwell's gonna help us with our gifts. Our content timely. We're not using skills from 2013. We're using 2018 skills, 2018 content. This is sort of our little appeal to keep us current. We will be back. It's the 20-something of January. We will be back. We are going on holiday hiatus. Holiday hiatus is important. Everybody's traveling, taking a vacation. So this is a great time for everyone to take a break. We use that to work on production ideas. This is how we started the sizzle reel. Chris worked on that over holiday hiatus. We take our hiatuses seriously. We rest on SPSM when we get ready for content for spring. If you know content that you do want, and Grace Durbin, at Grace Durbin, can somebody tweet at her? Thank you so much for the suggestion earlier this week. Then we try to find ways to make those kinds of things happen. We will be increasingly focusing on technology and innovation with a little bit more. I know you're so surprised we haven't done that intensely before. We are going to be talking about, it looks as if most of the messages from SPSM, I was looking, this was a great chance for me to sort of look back over the years, are things that are now in the mainstream media all the time, which is really great, and things that are being spoken at major conferences across the world and country. We've done a lot to contribute to moving the conversation, accelerating at the pace of changes in media and innovation. We're going to really keep focusing on that because that's the SPSM brand, and we'll do it with 2018 skills. Everybody have a wonderful holiday season. Have a happy new year. If you are struggling with chronic suicidality, don't struggle with chronic suicidality. That's not right. But if you are struggling with chronic suicidality, we hope that you'll reach out to your community and use your supports. We believe in you, and we're here for you. Let us continue to create good content that makes the world a better place to serve you and help you. Everybody have a great time. We will come back and see you in January. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Merry Christmas.